All right, Mr. Sapora here, marine biology, and we're going to be doing our species list number 2 this week, Cnidariana. So the first part of this will be the phylum notes, and then the second part will go over our list of species this week. Once again, the phylum notes you could take on the back or on a separate sheet of paper, and then the species list on the other side here. And if you don't have a printer and can't print this, you can just write this down on a sheet of notebook paper. Things to include in your species list: the common name, scientific name, a short description, some of those oh wow facts, and some of those interesting features of the organism, things that you would want to share with other people, and again, things that go beyond just what's in a photograph, like it occurs on rocks and it's there on a rock in the picture. So these are things that you'll want to learn as well. And then a drawing of the marine organism. And I have a Quizlet as well that I will link for this species list, so you can go there to review and practice the spelling, and it will even say them to you. I'm not sure how correct the pronunciation on Quizlet is, but we can go ahead and give it a try. Okay, let's jump into it and let's talk about Cnidariana. Soundtrack, please. All right, so features of the Cnidarians, or Cnidariana. Cnidarians are a group of animals, so that's a phylum within the animal kingdom, right below kingdom, it's phylum, and it's pronounced Cnidarian. It's not Cnidarian, the C is silent. They are animals, and they are all aquatic. They all occur in water. There's no land cnidarians walking around out there. They're mostly marine. And there's many other classes underneath the phylum Cnidariana. There's corals, and a wide variety of corals all around the world, jellyfish, anemones, and these other group called hydroids, which are unique little creatures themselves. And we're actually familiar with some of the hydroids too, because they're these colonial polyp type things. The Villela, which we'll talk about, one of our species, is kind of a hydroid. Okay, there's 10,000 species worldwide. And what are the characteristics that this group has in common? What are the things that they all share? And one of the things that they all share is the specialized stinging cells that they use to capture and paralyze their prey. And these specialized stinging cells are called cnidocysts, thus the name Cnidarian. They're actually named after this feature. So these cnidocytes or cnidocysts are little pew 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 harpoons that they shoot out, and they can paralyze other organisms, and then those organisms fall or get tangled up into their tentacles, and then they eat and dissolve them. They're really simple animals, though. They have a really simple body plan. These are not incredibly complex creatures physically, or probably personally. Their personalities are probably very basic. They have like two basic skin layers, an inner and an outer epithelium, and then they have like a jelly stuff in the middle that they can fill up with water. But that is really about it. They don't have complex tissues. They have radial symmetry. So all cnidarians have radial symmetry, meaning they don't have a right and a left. They can have kind of a top and a bottom, but they don't have a right and a left, just like there's no right and a left side to a wheel. A single orifice and body cavity. They take in food through an opening, and then they spit that food back out when they're done digesting it, out of that same opening. So their mouth and their butthole are the same thing. And so they don't have a through digestive system or a complex digestive system. And they have a nerve net, but no centralized sort of nervous system that is cross-communicating or processing information in any one spot. These are simple animals. These are some of the oldest and earliest multicellular animals. They arise right out of the group before them, porifera, which would be sponges. And sponges are even simpler. We'll look at one today and we can talk about them briefly. But Cnidariana goes way back in the fossil record. They're old and ancient. And again, some of the first multicelled animals out there are cnidarians. These predate, of course, things with backbones. These predate arthropods, crabs. These predate echinoderm, starfish, or mollusks, or anything. They go way, way back in the fossil record. Cool stuff. Okay, pretty short phylum notes today. I'm not going to belabor it. Let's talk about a species. This week should be pretty easy and some interesting ones. And we're not jumping straight into Cnidarians. We're going to jump into those in just a second. But I like to go through things in order of evolutionary phylogeny. So we're still working our way out of the marine plants. And we got this weird sort of hybrid one that I really had to include in the list. It's not really hybrid. It's still an algae. It's still a protist. But it has characteristics that some animals have in that it has this calcium carbonate sort of skeleton, but it's really a cell wall. And it's called crustose corallins, and it belongs to a group. There's quite a few different species out there, similar to Ulvaspa. This one is Clathromorphum spa. Let's say that together again. Clathromorphum spa. Okay, and it kind of morphum is shape, and then clathro is referring to this sort of calcium carbonate sort of coating that they put around them. And so they develop and deposit calcium carbonate in their cell walls, which makes them sort of inedible. And so it grows as this crust on top of rocks. It's doing photosynthesis like an algae, but herbivores like sea urchins or snails or sea slugs or limpets or chitons and many of the herbivorish sort of things that are creeping and crawling around the ocean aren't going to be able to eat it. So it's protected. And so it makes this pink crust that covers rocks and tide pools. And there's many different forms. Along the edges of some of the deeper bowls, instead of crusting there, because you're kind of on this edge, you're not really able to get too much sunlight only part of the day, they grow out as these leaves, kind of remind me of like little ferns or little liverworts that grow out and do photosynthesis. And you'll see these in tide pools, Clathromorphum. It's a plant, but it kind of has a skeleton like an animal. Jumping into animals, we're going to jump into sponges now. So cloud sponge is a really cool looking one of our sponges. You don't really see it in tide pools. It's deeper down. Again, usually from about 10 meters to 1,600 meters. So that's almost 6,000 feet deep or 5,000. Closer to 5,000 feet deep. Pretty deep down there. And sponges are neat because they're part of nature. Sponges are neat because they're animals, but they're really super primitive. So sponges have different cell types, but they don't really have different tissues. It's kind of this amorphous blob, and there's no symmetry to them. There's no right, left, top, or bottom. It's just this kind of blob. They have a couple of different cell types that do different jobs within the organism, but the whole thing is just basically a big filter feeder. They occur where there's water currents that move by, and when the water currents just sweep by them, they pick up all the plankton in the water and kind of catch it and filter it out like a giant coffee filter in the water. And that is how they behave. Cloud sponges can get pretty large. And they'll grow all the way down in the continental shelves. Here's a picture of a diver taking a look at one down there. It's pretty cool. Some of these. Oh, look at this one. What fool? Is that a giant octopus behind him or something? Ah! Okay. Really pretty looking, and also got a kind of a cool name. I like the name for cloud sponge. The scientific name for cloud sponge, backup dog. Oh, my slide's being fickle. Okay, scientific name for cloud sponge is Afrocalistes vastus. So afro, think about like a big yellow afro. That's what I think about it. Because they are kind of woo. And then calistes as in calluses. So it's kind of a tough afro, and they grow in these tubes that are kind of like vases. They're hollow in the middle, so the water filters through and all the plankton gets caught, and then the filtered water kind of gets pushed out the top of those vases. A lot of organisms use these for homes too. A lot of fish will hide around sponges and gather around them. It's an important little microhabitat that occurs in marine systems are sponges. Okay. Another cool one, now we're getting into the anemones, and we have several different groups of anemones, genuses of anemones, and then within those there's many species. So I just kind of highlighted a few of our main genuses here for you guys to have a look at. And so the first one is the giant plumose anemone. And giant plumoses anemones are really pretty looking. They stand out. They can get pretty tall. And the tentacles are real fine on these, real fine little hairs. So it kind of reminds me of like a head of cauliflower or something. They have millions of these little stinging cells, these cnidocysts on them. They have sort of a brownish base to them and then sort of a whitish head on them. And the scientific name for this one is a really interesting and cool one. Let's say it first. So the scientific name is Metridium farcimen. Metridium farcimen. And when I translated this out or looked this up, I found that it means mother sausage. Mother sausage. That's right. Mother sausage. So, there you have it, my gift to you. It's a great band name, Mother Sausage. I have my sign-in name on one of my music accounts is @MotherSausage. I really adopted it, and yeah, one of my favorite names ever. Okay, painted anemone is another one. The Urticina, crassicornis. Urticina is there are many anemones in this genus as well within our area, but this one is the prettiest and one you will find in tide pools as well. Although you have to go out kind of a low tide to find this one. The colors vary around the base of it. So the painting part comes from the base of the organism or the neck or whatever you'd want to call it of it. And it has this sort of modelly texture to it. Why did I just go to Clathromorphum when I clicked that? That's a mistake. So anyway, it can be kind of a cream color to a, my goodness, to a white like you see here with some red or purple flecking. But the one part that is pretty consistent are the tentacles. The tentacles have this sort of candy cane look to them, faint striping of pink, reddish, and white on these. These guys will eat a lot of things. They have a pretty hard sting too, so some people are sensitive to this one as far as touching it goes. They'll eat things that wash into them. Crabs, they'll grab a crab. They'll eat sea urchins if the sea urchin wanders across. They'll eat mussels or snails, chitons, anything, fish of course, that will wash across it. Growing in the tide pool region also, there's a lot of wave and tide action, so things get brought to them or brought back and forth, and those stinging tentacles are always out there feeling it. And if something, just is kind of rolling along, they'll grab it. And they go down about 30 meters deep. Okay, last one on our list this week. We got a short list. I'm keeping it right at 5, and you're welcome, is the green surf anemone. This is a name you should really, really work on memorizing. It can be a tough one, but it's also the darn coolest one out there. And the reason being is why you should learn this is because you see this anemone all the time. This is the most common, ubiquitous, widespread anemone in our region in the tide pools. It's everywhere, and it's because it has some cool features that make it want to come up to the light. So green surf anemone. The scientific name on this one is Anthopleura xanthogrammica. Kind of a cool sounding name, actually. And you can use this all the time because you'll run into this one whenever you're at the beach. Your friends will be like, oh, check it out, Anthopleura xanthogrammica. And they'll be annoyed with you. Okay, why is it green? Why does it like light? This one is a great example, textbook example of a symbiotic relationship. So this has a symbiotic algae that lives inside its tissue that does photosynthesis. So it's literally got a plant-like organism living inside of it. And the plant does photosynthesis, and then the cnidarian, the anemone, gets the benefit of that. It gets some sugar and glucose that it can use and digest in its metabolism. What does the algae get? The algae gets a home that is free and safe from grazers. It's not going to get eaten by a sea urchin. It's not going to get eaten by a snail or anything, right? Something was like that was to cruise along trying to eat it. The anemone would just sting it and swallow it. So anyway, pretty cool stuff. These feed on urchins and barnacles and whatever washes up in fish as well. And again, usually the sting of these is not something that can affect you, but most of us have pretty thick skin on our hands. Some people occasionally are sensitive to these things, but I think if you were to stick your inner arm on it or something, it would probably leave a welt or even be pretty painful. And so I've heard stories about people trying to stick their tongues in these things or kiss them. Do not do that. You can end up in the emergency room having a really severe reaction to the paralytic sting. It'd be similar to getting stung by a jellyfish on your tongue. Whoa. Okay, not a good idea. So this week's list got introduced to the 3 of the cnidarians. We're going to learn some more next week, and we saw a sponge and a weird crusting coral as well in there. Going backwards through the list, we've got green surf anemone, Anthopleura xanthogrammica, painted anemone, Urticina crassicornis, giant plumose anemone, Metridium farcimum, cloud sponge, Afrocallistes vastus, and lastly, our crustose corallines. There's a big group of them, so I spud them out there. Clathromorphum spa. Clathromorphum is a genus, and there's multiple species throughout our region. Okay, that's it. Write these down, draw them, memorize them, learn some fun facts, and we'll see you next week.